Noon pushing into southeastern Scotland by the end of the day. Showers will break out elsewhere, perhaps some thunderstorms again for Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, southwestern parts, but more especially where temperatures rise up to the mid to high 20s. The chance of some serious thunderstorms taking place across parts of east and southeast England. A few of these rumbling on into the evening, but eventually they'll die away. And the rain across eastern Scotland clears as well into the start of Wednesday. But further showers turn up in the west at this stage as well. Another warm night to come, 15, 16 in the south, 13, 14 further north. Perhaps a fresher feel for parts of Scotland with some clear spells first thing Wednesday. But we've got showers from the word go across Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, a few for Wales and Western England. They'll develop widely across the UK on Wednesday, and then a few more showers to come on Thursday as well. But the overall theme is for it to turn drier in the south by the end of the week and much warmer.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Meow. I learned something new today, everybody. It's perfectly acceptable to identify as a cat. You what?
Don't you dare mock it, by the way, because I've decided that is now what I am, meow shell to you. But if you do indeed mock it, careful, because I wouldn't be surprised if it could be considered a hate crime. Self-identity, where do we draw the line? Kids at school being told that they must respect it if this is how their peers seriously want to present themselves. Really? What on earth is going on in our schools? How worried about it should we be? And why are parents not allowed to see the content that children are being taught? Very alarming, if you ask me. And while I've been busy licking milk from saucers, over in Westminster, they've been busy debating parties. It's still going on. No vote as yet. Should it even be voted on? Of course, I'm talking about Boris Johnson. Also, cats can indeed discuss serious things. Mortgage rates at the highest they have been in years. Over 6% now you'll be paying. Should the government intervene? I want to talk as well about the expansion of stop and search and also free speech. Should there be limits? If so, who gets to decide them? And if you breach them, should it be a criminal act? That is all from me, though. Let's get our news from Polly Middlehurst for now. Meow.
Michelle, thank you. Well, the top stories this hour. We're keeping an eye on the House of Commons for you today. They're in the midst of debating that report that found Boris Johnson lied over Partygate. Let's show you live pictures coming from the House of Commons where that debate is ongoing. MPs are deciding whether or not to sanction Boris Johnson after the Privileges Committee last week found he repeatedly misled the House of Commons. Well, in the last hour, we heard Penny Mordaunt, the Commons leader, say she would vote in favour of the report into Johnson's conduct. We saw as well former Prime Minister Theresa May praising the Privileges Committee about half an hour ago, saying she fully supported the report. But in the last few minutes, we've seen one Tory MP adamant Johnson did not mislead Parliament. And in fact, one other MP shouted rubbish as a Johnson supporter, blame the officials themselves. Well, it is quite a lively debate in the House of Commons today. Rishi Sunak at number 10 staying out of it. He's skipping the debate because he says he doesn't want to influence the decision of MPs. Well, as I said, the former Prime Minister Theresa May a short time ago said the report would be a small but important step in restoring people's trust in politics. Here's what she said.
I will vote in favour of the report of the Privileges Committee. I urge all members of this House to do so, to uphold standards in public life, to show that we all recognise the responsibility we have to the people we serve, and to help to restore faith in our parliamentary democracy.
Well, the Metropolitan Police has confirmed it's now looking into 3 potential breaches of COVID regulations between June 2020 and May 2021 at Downing Street and at Chequers. That's after the Sunday Mirror obtained a video apparently showing Conservative staff partying during the pandemic and joking about restrictions of lockdown at the time. Rishi Sunak once again staying out of this, saying he doesn't want to interfere in matters. Well, the former Prime Minister David Cameron has been getting involved today. He told the COVID-19 inquiry it had been a mistake not to look at different types of diseases when the UK prepared for future pandemics. Mr Cameron was giving evidence to the independent inquiry into the UK's response into the COVID-19 pandemic. Take a look.
So much time was spent on a pandemic influenza, and that was seen as the greatest danger, and we've had flus, we had very bad years for flus, so it is a big danger. But why wasn't more time more questions asked about what turned out to be the pandemic that we faced? And it's very hard to answer why that's the case, and I'm sure this public inquiry is going to spend a lot of time on that.
Well, away from the pandemic, let's bring you up to date with what's happening in the North Atlantic. A tour firm, Ocean Gate, has within the last hour confirmed one of its vessels, a submersible, we understand, and the crew are missing in the Atlantic. The US Coast Guard telling GB News just earlier on today that a submersible taking tourists to the site of the Titanic famous wreck is missing. The US-based company offers visits to the area where the Titanic lies more than 12,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. More on that story as those pieces of news come to us. Now, police have broken up an Albanian gang that allegedly brought migrants into the UK on small boats. 3 members of the crime group were arrested early on this morning by officers from the National Crime Agency. If you're watching on TV, you can see those pictures of the arrests coming to us from this morning. GB News understands the group has been charged with giving rides to migrants at a cost of £7,000 a journey. The arrest comes as nearly 11,000 illegal migrants crossed the Channel in small boats since the start of the year. Now, finance news and mortgage rates in the UK have reached a new high this year, increasing costs for borrowers and those who want to buy a house. The 2-year fixed home loan now stands at just about 6%. And this morning, the Prime Minister ruled out any extra government assistance for households struggling with payments. The Home Secretary has been urging police chiefs across England and Wales today to ramp up their use of stop and search powers. Suella Braverman saying officers who use the powers have her full support if they'll prevent violence and save more lives. However, critics of stop and search say it disproportionately targets black and ethnic minority communities. The Home Office has said, and she's told the Commons today as well, she wants every community in the UK to trust in stop and searches, but added it must be a power that's used responsibly.
It's always heartbreaking and distressing to read reports about stabbings and shootings. I'm struck by how often mothers of murdered young black men say that stop and search could have saved their sons' lives. We owe it to them to heed their call. The facts are on their side. Stop and search works and is a vital tool in the fight against serious violent crime.
Suella Braverman. Well, lastly, King Charles has attended his first service for the Order of the Garter as monarch. Thousands of people gathered outside Windsor Castle today to catch a glimpse of His Majesty alongside Queen Camilla at St George's Chapel. The Prince and Princess of Wales also in attendance today. 800 invited guests, and one off the invite list was the Duke of York, despite being a member of the Order of the Garter. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, normal service has been resumed. I'm back to being called Michelle again, so don't worry, you won't misgender me if you get that one wrong. I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside with Dominique Samuels, the writer and broadcaster, and Nigel Nelson, GB News senior political commentator. Welcome to both of you. You know the drill as well, Data on Dewbs & Co. It's not just about us, it is very much about you guys at home. What is on your mind tonight? If you're sitting there thinking, has Michelle got a massive mustache? What's gone on? I haven't actually, no. I've just been trying to kind of decap myself. It wasn't as easy as I thought, given that I only had about 2 minutes to do it. So, yeah, excuse my appearance. What can I say? Anyway, gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address, or you can tweet me at gbnews. Now, let's get into politics, shall we? Because for the last few hours, they've been busying themselves over in Westminster. Of course, looking at the outcome of the Privileges Committee, the report looking into Boris Johnson and what sanctions should be applied to him. Laughably, really, anyway, given that he's already resigned. Apparently, Theresa May, she's been speaking out. For example, she says this is a small but important step in restoring people's trust in politics. Nigel, I'll pick up with you first. I found this whole thing a little bit of a farce, actually. You're all sitting there wasting your parliamentary time debating about whether or not you would have suspended someone for 90 days who's not even there anymore. It's all pointless, isn't it?
Well, no, because it's a parliamentary procedure. So the whole point is that the committee didn't actually suspend Boris Johnson for the 90 days. Parliament has to do that. So all the committee can do is make a recommendation.
But he's already gone.
He's already gone.
So
but
what's the point?
But there are two points there. One is that that MPs turn around and say, "Yep, the report was right. The evidence was that he misled the House." That's the first stage. Second stage, obviously, is the 90 days, which can't happen because he's gone. And the final stage is to take away.
So this is how bothered they are about it, by the way, because whilst Nigel's speaking, you see in the screen there, it's hardly a packed house, is it?
No, an awful lot of Tories have stayed away. They'd rather not get involved in it. There may not even be...
That's not just the Tory side that's empty, though. Look at that.
Well, I think the Labour side have decided if the Tories aren't there, they won't be there either.
What you mean is they don't want to break into their sunshine break?
Well, perhaps they're an awful lot of them on the terrace enjoying the sunshine out there in the House of Commons.
So you think this is all well and good, that it should be happening. You disagree with me when I'm saying I think it's a complete waste of time.
Yes, it has to happen because it is the conclusion of the parliamentary process.
Dominique?
Yeah, I would agree that Parliament has to be seen to be carrying out the process. However, you know, to regular everyday people, it does look a tad performative because, I mean, most people would want Parliament to be dedicating its time urgently to the matters that face the public. But I think what's quite ironic about this is that Boris supporting media, should I say, have sort of created this idea that there's this wave of distress because Boris has been so unfairly treated, when really there's only a handful of people that actually support him in the wake of the Partygate report being published, and there's not that many people there.
I think there is actually. When I look at my inbox on a night time, you guys you're not backwards and coming forwards, and you do get in touch. A lot of these people watching this programme, for example, would say it's a bit of a witch hunt. They'll be talking about the Bernard Jenkins situation and saying, well, actually, if the people that are doing the investigation, if even they were not doing what they were supposed to have done, then the whole thing is moot, basically.
But the point is that the person in charge of making the rules didn't stick to the letter of the rules. The person in charge of making the rules lied about not knowing that the rules were being broken. And in reference to the people supporting him, I meant mostly MPs because, you know, we've heard so much noise from people like Jacob Rees-Mogg and others about how unfair this is, when really probably most Conservative MPs accept that it'd be embarrassing and harmful to the party not to acknowledge that he's done something wrong.
Well, there's another leak, I think just before the weekend or maybe over the weekend. My day's blur into one. I don't know if you saw it. We'll bring that up in case you missed out. A little bit of dad dancing going on. I would describe this at one of the parties. I think I've got that video to show you. Yep, there you go. This is when you lot was all sitting at home, not seeing your loved ones, being absolutely terrified, thinking that you won't be able to spend Christmas together, etc. This lot were partying like it's 1999. My overwhelming sense when I see any of these videos is you weren't afraid of COVID. You terrified the life out of us at home with your 5 o'clock briefings. You made us all think was going to go kill our grannies. And you lot, the closest to the data in lots of cases, you were not afraid.
Well, bear in mind, these aren't civil servants. These are Conservative Party staff, and they were having a party because they'd been on Sean Bailey's London mayoral campaign, which is what the party's about. The police are now having another look at this. At the time, bear in mind that the police decided, they did look into it, decided there wasn't enough evidence to fine anybody. They now have another look at the video and see if they made the right decision.
I will say
things to do with the time.
Yeah, I don't think that this is entirely fair. You know, it's a group of young people who weren't in charge of making the rules. Yes, they were staffers, but for this to be the video that does the rounds, I think, again, it's like skirting responsibility for the people who are actually making the rules. They were just being normal. And also, I feel like it's unfair because Sean Bailey was one of the first people to be in the firing line for breaking the COVID rules. He took the flak. He resigned from the Police and Crime Commission.
He's going to be in the House of Lords, isn't he?
And then this video is circulating, presumably to stop him from, you know, sitting there. But I'd like to point out, as someone who knows Sean, he doesn't drink and he wasn't there. So, you know.
Don't even get me started.
No, it's very true. He had left before that video was taken.
So just so people don't think he was there partying with everyone, he wasn't even there.
But don't even get me started on the fact that people are getting into the House of Lords, etc., just basically for doing their jobs. I found that whole thing very bizarre.
I would agree.
Anyway, let's move on and talk about mortgages. Have you got one? Are you sitting there thinking there's absolutely no chance I ever will get one? Do you sit in despair thinking the whole Englishman's home is his castle? Is that something that is just way out of reach for you? Well, I could tell you it's got a little bit worse, everybody. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, because a typical 2-year fixed mortgage deal now has an interest rate of more than 6%. 6% for the first time since December. Mortgage lenders have been putting their rates up and up and up. Not so fast for the savers, though, I can't help but notice. Have you noticed that yourself? Anyway, there's been lots of calls for the government to step in and help out with mortgages. Nigel, do you think it should?
Nope. And reason being is that mortgages are a choice. That when the government did step in, it was COVID, which no one could be blamed for. People who had to go on furlough did so because of the disease. On the basis of that, the government then paid money into that. They upped universal credit by £20 a week. And we've just seen our energy bills have been cut on the basis of the Ukraine war. Again, no one's fault. Mortgages are a choice. There's no more reason why the tax...
quite an essential choice. You're not going to live in a cardboard box, are you?
Well, I mean, food is a choice, but I mean, buying shares is a choice. I mean, would you say that the taxpayer should pay if I lose a lot of money on the stock exchange?
But there was a scheme many years ago, MIRAS, I think that's how you pronounce it, the MIRAS scheme, where there was relief, if you like, on the interest part of people's mortgage. It was Gordon Brown that actually went on to stop that. He was saying it's basically like a middle-class perk. So this has been done before outside of COVID times.
Yeah, but I mean, that was a tax break. That was a change in the tax system. What we're talking about here is, do we subsidise people because their mortgages are going up? And the argument I would make is that that was a choice. I mean, you can't subsidise absolutely everything when bills go up.
As I don't mean to be rude, but as an older person that's probably been on the housing ladder for quite a while, who's got a big fat chunk of equity in a property that you bought for next to nothing, is that where your position's coming from?
No, I mean, in fact, I bought my last house about 4 years ago. Oh. So next year I'm looking at a very high mortgage because my 5-year fixed deal will come to an end.
It's up. Dominique, where do you stand on it?
I can't help but feel like it feels a bit unfair, especially for younger people that would want to get on the housing ladder. It just seems further and further and further out of reach. And in terms of, affordability checks, as I understand it from what I've read, those affordability checks wouldn't have even counted what currently is happening now in terms of our economic situation, with prices rising across the board in every sort of scenario.
Yeah.
So, I think that what is happening, I don't think is anyone's fault either. And I think that instinctively, I think probably the government should help out. Because what you'll see is more and more people struggling to pay their bills, and then they'll be putting less into the economy, and then it'll create a bigger problem.
I mean, you say it's no one's fault. I would lay the blame fairly at the Bank of England's door, actually. I think their policy decisions have been absolutely woeful. They had one job: you keep your inflation rate to 2%. And I mean, I don't even know how you can stay in your job as top management at the Bank of England, because what's happened, it's gone way off piece. We're not just a little bit, we're not just 4%, we're 10% there or thereabouts, which I think is shameful.
You're right to criticise the Bank of England. I mean, I think that they were very slow to deal with inflation when they should have done. Inflation's a global problem, so it's not just something that's happening to us. The real problem is that the only way to get it down, the only weapon we have, is to raise interest rates. Raise interest rates, mortgages go up. So, in that sense, the Bank of England is now backed into a corner. It's a very blunt instrument,
though, isn't it? It's a very blunt... What about...
But there is no other way of doing it.
What about...
You have to take money out of the economy.
What about windfall taxes on the banks? Because these guys must be making money hand over fist, because they are not, I can't help but notice, passing decent interest rate rises on to savers, like minimally they might be, but nowhere near the rates that they should be, I don't think. So they will be making quite big profits on these huge increases of interest rates that they can now charge. So some people are saying, well, windfall tax them, take the money off them.
I'm always in favour of windfall taxes on rich bankers, but I don't think that would help the mortgage problem.
Well, no, because you could create some kind of scheme. So you'd take the profits off the banks, and I don't know, you'd sit and you'd create some kind of fund where you'd give everyone, I don't know, I've not worked it all out through, but you'd take it from them and you'd give it to the homeowners that are currently struggling.
Sounds a very socialist policy.
Well,
I'm just floating it out there, guys, floating it out there.
Sometimes a mix of things are needed. There doesn't always have to be a label on them. So, yeah. And also, I wish that before, everyone agreed to the lockdowns and stuff, people understood the sort of ramifications it would have for years to come. I don't think anyone did.
I always say this, and when I talk about COVID, people will say, oh, Michelle, shut up, get off your COVID bandwagon, life's moved on, no one cares about COVID. And I'm like a stuck record, me, because I always sit there and say, but don't you realise Don't you realise that the reason that we're in so many of the situations today, whether it's mental health crises, broken NHSs, interest rates through the roof, don't you realise it was as a reaction, the result, I would say direct result, of government policy in response to COVID? That's why I don't have it in me, I can't move on from COVID, because it is the root of so many of today's problems. Anyway, your thoughts on that, please. The whole Partygate thing, do you think it's what police should be spending their time doing? And what about mortgages as well? Do you think you should get some help? And if you're renting, do you think it's a little bit unfair that just mortgages would be getting help? And coming up later on in the programme, do not go anywhere, it's all going on. Can you self-identify as cats? Apparently, if you're in the school, some of the teachers think that yes, you can, and you better respect it. Stop and Search will be expanded. Is it racist? Is it effective or not?
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is much more...
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Lots of you getting in touch about that Boris thing. Why are we wasting taxpayers' money debating all of this again, says Sharon. It's a subject that's long gone and nobody cares. The Privilege Committee is a sanctimonious indulgence by those who hate Boris Johnson, says Annette. Remember Allegra? Yeah, I do remember, actually. Allegra Stratton, wasn't she crying? She had to go, and all she was doing is talking about having a party, says Philip. yes, divided you are about whether or not the government should help out on that property and, you know, on your mortgages, whether or not they should get involved, to what extent. You really are divided. James says no, 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 no. Why should we taxpayers pay off other people's mortgages when we have not a hope of getting on the ladder? Mike says, I agree with Nigel. Several people I know say don't gamble. This is wrong, as mortgages are pretty much a gamble these days too. I hear what you're saying. Anyway, let's talk stop and search, shall we? Suella Braverman has been out speaking about police and asking them basically to increase the use of stop and search powers to prevent violence and save more lives. This is a big, broad statement aimed at all 43 forces in England and Wales. And she says that any officers that do use those powers had her full support. Let's have a listen.
I'm struck by how often mothers of murdered young black men say that stop and search could have saved their sons' lives. We owe it to them to heed their call. The facts are on their side. Stop and search works and is a vital tool in the fight against serious violent crime.
Tough words there. Do you agree with them, Dominique?
Not really, just based upon sort of what I've read that looks into how effective stop and search is. You have to actually stop and search a very, very large number of people in order to find contraband. So I sort of feel like when it comes to stop and search, it's become like a buzzword because of how sort of obvious it feels like. Yeah, if you want to find a weapon, you go to the people that are more likely to be carrying a weapon or wanting to use a weapon, which is young black males. But I feel like, based upon the evidence, what would be better is a more intelligence-based approach so that you're not just randomly stopping people, say, for example, outside the tube, because I feel like it is an assault on individual liberty to be randomly targeted for really just a hunch and to be humiliated in front of loads of people. So I feel like it should be more selectively used. And again, it feels like a bit of a buzzword to sort of distract from some of the issues, which is also mentioned in the State of Policing report, which, for example, lack of funding, lack of inadequate funding, and how unequal funding is in certain areas of the country. I think that would probably help tackle some more of this stuff instead of just blanket statements like we need to be stopping and searching people.
But there is certainly a sense among a lot of people that the streets do seem to be more dangerous. The amount of, you know, quite vicious, violent knife crime going on in broad daylight these days with contraptions. I don't even know where people buy these things from. They're just horrific, murderous contraptions that almost seem like a badge of honour. The more violent and vile this thing is, the more kudos you will get among your silly little mates in your gang.
But surely that's an issue of also where these young people are getting these weapons from. Usually they are online where they're getting like zombie knives and machetes. Perhaps you could look at that, look at how they're actually getting them in the first place. I agree that having more visible police is a good thing, but just in terms of an individual liberty standpoint, I just don't feel comfortable with a police officer having the power just to randomly stop me just because and search me in front of the public. I don't know.
I hear you. What do you make to it, Nigel?
Well, I'm a bit more relaxed about stop and search on the basis that police are meant to have grounds for suspicion before they carry it out. So it's not just a random thing. And if they are doing that, that's the sort of thing that should be put a stop to. But say, for instance, there's a burglary. A neighbour tells the police that they saw a slightly tubby guy in a pink shirt and a grey suit hanging around the house before the burglary.
That's intelligence.
Then I walk round the corner. I think the police would have reasonable grounds to actually want to search me for that. So provided they have those reasonable grounds, that seems fine. And to make sure that there isn't a racist element to it, it's incumbent on police chiefs to actually check what their officers are doing. So you can't have a 50-50 balance because 4 times more young black men are murdered than white men. So the balance can't be that, but it can be if you had one white police officer who only stopped and searched black people. I think that needs to be monitored, but only the police can do that.
Yeah, so the example you raised, I wouldn't have a problem with because that is using intelligence. It's not looking at someone and thinking, oh, they're wearing an outfit that I think looks a bit suspicious. They fit certain statistics in my area, so let's just stop and target them. I think there's a big difference. And also in terms of when you look at the statistics, in terms of like where you are. So say, for example, you're in, like the northeast of England, well, there aren't that many black people. There's a greater chance of someone using a prejudice that they have, looking at, national statistics and using that in a way that is racist. I feel like giving someone so much power to stop and search someone randomly, I think it unnecessarily opens the door to that sort of stuff. I think it should be intelligence-based and it shouldn't just be random. No.
Yeah, what do you guys make to this at home? Because there's always such a push, isn't there, that you want more police presence on the street. I do agree with you, because I've seen a lot of people be stopped and searched, and I have often found it a little bit uncomfortable, like I try and avert my eyes and stuff, because I just feel, you're literally in the middle of the street, in the middle of everybody. You're treating this guy like a potential criminal. And there's something about that makes me just feel so uneasy. And I think, can't you do it in a way that, I don't know, can't you have like a screen or, I don't know, somewhere where you're at least trying to protect the dignity of the person? Because, you don't know if he or she has done anything wrong. You're searching potentially for something. They are at that stage innocent, of course, until proven or found to be guilty. So I just think if it was anyone being stopped and searched, you would want a little bit of your privacy to be respected, and I think they fail often.
Yeah, I think we all deserve dignity, and that's not to say that we should allow people to just be criminal, but when it comes to, like, say, for example, reacting to videos on the internet, that's clearly someone out in the street waving around a knife or doing something that's very obvious. It's not someone that's just walking down the street.
This is very true. What do you guys make to this at home? Do you want more of stop and search? Does stop and search make you feel safer when you see a police presence, you see them trying to be proactive and take action? Do you think, yes, thank you, I do feel slightly safer walking the streets at night? I've got a great story coming up for you guys. I have to be honest, I find it absolutely laughable. There is a school where now a child identifies as a cat, yes, as an animal, and a couple of the kids there have decided to take, ill with this. It's not normal, they say. It's reflective, they say, of a mental illness. The teacher has had absolutely none of it. There's a great recording of that, and personally, I found this whole thing so worrying. Can you really identify as a cat? Is that what we want to teach our children in the schools? And why is there not transparency over what exactly these kids are being taught on these subjects in the first place? Your thoughts? Don't go anywhere.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
You love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
White on G.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. Coming up before the end of the programme, the strangest story I think I've ever heard. And guys, I hear a lot of strange stories in this job, I can tell you. In a school, a kid identifying as a cat, and when I say kid, I don't mean a child goat, I mean an actual child, is now saying that they are a cat. Laugh it off, you might think, but no, the teacher is taking it seriously. The children have been told that they have to respect that, and it's broadened this huge conversation about what kids are being taught in schools. I think it's very worrying. What says you? I've got that coming up before the end of the programme. On Stop and Search, Doug says, Michelle, if just one knife is taken from 1,000 stop and searches, surely that is one life saved. We must respect that. He says, Darren, if you've got nothing to hide, what's the problem? Well, Darren, if you were just wandering around your business, and let's just say, I don't know, you're a white middle-aged man, and you were stopped and searched just because you were a white middle-aged man all the time. You might get stopped, I don't know, a couple of times a month. You're out and about with your kids. Would you still think it was a problem then? John says society must always support the police. The alternative is anarchy. Crime statistics are useful data, and instead of it being ignored, they should guide policy, says Mark. Lots of dividing on that, and I could hear Dominique disagreeing with some of those comments just coming in as well. Now, I've got a topic, and I have to say, this will be something that really does divide opinion. And I think a lot of you might be quite offended when you hear what it is that I'm referring to, because you'll be familiar with this case, perhaps. A man has today pleaded guilty to wearing what I would personally say is an absolutely disgusting shirt, and a very offensive shirt as well, about the Hillsborough tragic disaster. He wore this to the FA Cup final. You will have seen this in the news. You'll have been seeing this picture circulating around. The guy, absolute moron, if you ask me, of the highest order, caused a huge amount of offence about an issue that still, all these years later, understandably so, hurts and upsets a number of people, you know, right across the country. Families, of course, lost their loved ones, will never get them back. And then you've got absolute pillocks like this fella, James White. He was at court today grinning away like the moron that he is. He's been fined now £1,000. He was banned from attending football matches for 4 years, and he had to pay costs. I've got to say, nobody will disagree that this is an offensive shirt. Nobody will disagree that this is in bad taste, offensive to many people, and that he shouldn't have worn it. The guy was wrong. But should it be a crime?
Yes. And the only defence against that is free speech. But free speech carries with it a responsibility, and one of those responsibilities is not to indulge in hate speech. It is a crime to promote terrorism. Absolutely right. You don't want to radicalise people to become suicide bombers. So in this case, what this guy was doing, that he could have, apart from just upsetting people, he could have caused severe unrest. And on the basis of that, he should not be allowed to do it. You cannot just have unlimited free speech. Just cannot do that.
So you think absolutely court of law, criminal law applied to this fella is the right thing, criminal record for you for doing that?
Yes.
Dominique?
I think we have to just look at it sort of in simpler terms. He wore a shirt that some people found offensive. Well, most people would find offensive when you look at the context, but it's a shirt. He probably is an idiot, probably doesn't have a very tasteful sense of humour, but at the end of the day, he wore a shirt, and I don't think it should be a crime to do that. I think what we should be doing is allowing the club itself to decide who it doesn't and does want inside its establishment, which it has done. It's given him a lifetime ban, and that should be the end of it. I mean, really, the likelihood of him being fined, you know, for committing a criminal offence is probably low if that didn't go viral on social media, because it's just not something that people, well, the police prioritise, and I think it should be left up to the club. I think that you start with things like this, where does it end? It shouldn't be a crime to upset someone or say, or do something offensive, and I'm sorry, it doesn't matter what context that's in.
So there's no limits to that. So you can I don't know, wear a T-shirt about, you know, awful things like the Holocaust and stuff like that in your mind.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be all right?
Oh, it's not OK. I don't morally think that that's right, and it's not something that I would do. But I think what people forget about the point of freedom of speech is it's also to allow the public to be free to criticise that and to be free to express their views as well. I don't think that it should be in the hands of the court because someone wore a shirt that people didn't like.
I'm astonished that the guy didn't get filled in, to be honest. But, well, I am.
Which is curious. It's curious, but at the end of the day, the club shouldn't have even let him in, I think. Or wherever he was, he shouldn't have been let in, and that's that.
Of course, I mean, I always get astonished with these things. At no point, from dreaming up your idea, going to the printers, seeing the design mocked up, buying it, receiving it, sticking it on your back, showing your friends, leaving. I am astonished that brain cells do not kick in and think to yourself, actually,
this is a bad idea.
Yeah, this is not my brightest idea. It is deeply offensive. But to Dominique's point, Nigel, who gets to decide the lines then? Who gets to decide what is offensive and what is not and what should be criminalised?
Well, eventually it's Parliament, it's the legal system. And what Parliament has done is said, look, there are various hate crimes that and hate speech which should be banned. That's rubber stamped by the United Nations. I mean, it is they guarantee freedom of expression, but these are exceptions.
Well, it's not freedom of expression if there's certain things that you can't do.
Freedom of expression shouldn't be unlimited.
You can't wear a shirt.
It can't be unlimited. We can't allow, and we do all censor ourselves all the time. I mean, we wouldn't swear on this programme.
In that case, is the place that he got it from, are they committing a crime as well? Should they be banned from producing a shirt like that?
Well, they should be banned from producing a shirt like that.
Right, so...
I mean, I don't know where he got it and the actual details behind that.
Well, there's quite a lot of them online, actually. I was looking, and there's quite a lot of outlets where you can buy those tops from.
Well, in which case, then, if the police visited them, they would be in the same boat as this guy.
Well, do you see how dark that is? You can't make this shirt because we don't like it. And look, I don't agree with what he did, but I just think it's a slippery slope. Very slippery slope. I think
is there not a line somewhere where you go too far? So, for instance, if you got a group of young people around and you started talking to them about wearing suicide vests, that is freedom of speech. Is that acceptable?
That's not acceptable because you're directly inciting people to...
So there's a line somewhere. There's a line somewhere where speech is not totally free.
There's a line that's been long established, though, and that's with intention to do harm, violence against other people. All he did was wear a shirt that said not enough. I mean, you could interpret that in so many ways. The only way that you would interpret it as being about Hillsborough is if you knew what Hillsborough was. If you wore that in Barcelona somewhere...
That was Hillsborough.
I know, but yeah, I'm not saying it wasn't, but if you didn't know anything about football and didn't know anything about Hillsborough, you would just think it was a shirt saying not enough.
Oh, I mean, you don't have to have sport as your specialist subject on Mastermind to know that was I
didn't know that was about Hillsborough.
Well, I'll throw it open to you guys at home. You've heard both sides of the argument there. Where do you stand on it? Of course, everyone would agree that was grossly offensive. I mean, you're lacking brain cells, if you ask me, if you think that is a good idea. But should it be a crime? I'll throw it open to you to have the final word on that one. GB Views at gbnews.com. Do not go away. This next story is an absolute cracker. Kids being allowed to identify as animals at school. This world, I promise you, it's going mad. We'll look at it and more.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back with me, Meow Shell, to you, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, Dominic Samuels, the writer and broadcaster, and Nigel Nelson, GB News senior political commentator. Now, I've decided in the break that I self-identify as a cat, everybody. That is my gender. You can just pronoun me as per, as opposed to, that's not a great pair, I accept that, but per instead of hair, please. And if you think that I am barking mad, you're all wrong, because get this right, a teacher, yes, this is a true story, do not worry about that, a teacher has branded a Year 8 pupil despicable after she rejected a classmate's claim that she identified as a cat. This has all been recorded and is being very widely circulated indeed. We shall play a little bit of it, and I will just warn you now, the voices have been distorted to protect the fact that there's kids' identity and all the rest of it. You know the rules. Go on.
How dare you? You've just really upset someone. Saying things like should be in an asylum.
I didn't say that. I just said if they want to identify as a cat or something, then they're like genuinely unwell. Yeah, they're crazy.
You were questioning their identity.
I wasn't a question. I was just saying about the gender. I didn't say anything about them.
But where'd you get this idea from? There's only two genders.
I just said my opinion.
You were talking about the fact that cisgender is the norm. That you identify with the gender, with the sexual organ that you're born with, or you're with. That's basically what you're saying, which is really despicable.
Well done if you could decipher most of that. But the point of it was she was being called despicable. She was told that she cannot have the opinion. So the child was saying that her opinion is that you can't change your gender. The teacher, and I will make a direct quote, said, "That is not an opinion that we express in this school. And if you don't like it, you need to go to a different school." Now, Dominique, as much as I'm being silly with my fancy dress, this is a very serious story because I mean, what is going on in this world when children consider they're cats and be taken seriously at school?
Exactly. And I'm afraid that teacher is just one of the many examples we're seeing of teachers, educators, people that are trusted with, you know, our children's understanding of this world, their readiness to actually explore different points of view, when teachers are actively, very aggressively shouting that down in quite an emotionally unstable way, I think. I don't know whether or not the issue was very personal to that teacher in particular, but the way she dealt with it was completely unprofessional. And to say that if you express these views that she really has decided is unacceptable, I'm not sure she speaks for the whole entire school, if you don't like it, find another school, is an example of how polarised this debate has actually become, where anyone who expresses, you know, a pretty much scientifically sound view that there are only two genders and that identifying yourself with a cat is, you know, really, it doesn't make any sense at all, does it? You get shouted down and called a homophobe. She's linked it to homophobia.
She said she was saying, why do you think, this is a direct quote, why do you think we have so many problems in the world with homophobia? Now, look at this little graphic, everyone. Some people would say that there's about 70-odd genders. This one describes 18. This was an NHS questionnaire thing that was asking you to identify with all of these different genders. Which one are you? This is bonkers, isn't it, Nigel?
Well, I mean, the teacher was unnecessarily aggressive on this one. I thought the kids were actually fighting back quite admirably. And where the teacher should have gone with this conversation is, no, you can't identify as a cat or an aardvark or a chihuahua or something like that. You cannot identify as a different species.
But you think you can change your gender?
But I do think you can change your gender. And so that is enshrined in British law for most purposes.
So you think, so for example, I could decide so you're saying a cat is me taking it too far, but I could
It's a different species, so it would be ridiculous.
So as long as
any
it's
more
the
than
same
you're a pillar box
species,
or something.
I could identify, as long as it's the same species, you're comfortable that I could identify as that. So I could identify as a man.
Yes, you can.
Could I identify as a black man?
Then it gets more complicated because transgender is something that is a personal necessity. If you're trying to change your race, that is a choice, and it also affects another community.
Well, but do you not think that this whole transgender thing affects another community? Men saying that they can be women. Do you not think that the community of women are affected by that?
Well, they are, and that's where we talk about women's spaces. But under the law, a woman can have a penis.
Yeah, I mean,
and the question then is whether or not that woman should be able to use women-only spaces. I think not, by the way. But the only difference under the law is you don't send a trans woman with male genitalia into a women's prison.
Firstly, just because something is law doesn't mean that it makes sense or that it's right. And you know, if something is not right, just because it's law, that doesn't mean, you know, you have to follow it. It's my personal view.
Well, you have to follow the law.
Well, you don't have to follow the law if it's not right, and that's how people affect change. But on that, the logic is the same. It doesn't matter if you're identifying as a different race or if you're identifying as a different species, because the whole point of being transgender and having gender dysphoria is the idea that you were placed in the wrong body and you identify with another gender. So using that logic, you can feel like you were born into the wrong race, because that's a biological thing. You can feel as though me not being white is materially affecting my life and my mental health. Same with a different species. I mean, it's not entirely uncommon for people to identify with animals and want to be animals. I mean, online you can find where people can actually pretend to be dogs and foxes.
But they can't
cats.
be a dog or a fox.
But they believe it in their mind, so the logic is the same. It is.
You know, I worry about this because it's all well and good to be a little bit flippant about it, but to me there is a real safeguarding issue here. So you've got companies, external companies that are going into schools in this country. Parents are not allowed to see what it is, the material that these children are receiving. A parent was going through a tribunal recently and was, again, she failed at a challenge to see this material because what they were saying is showing this material that kids are being taught would breach the confidentiality that they have in place with these schools and reduce their ability to commercialise their proposition. If the material was in the public domain, they couldn't be able to monetise it. This is so worrying. And I think actually parents do need to stand up to this, push back against it, because children, they shouldn't be told, you cannot say that there's two genders, you have to respect everyone for whatever it is, whatever. But yet actually when someone feels that two genders is a real thing, as is biological sex, that one, you don't have to respect that one. That's just a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, but that's the kind of debate that you should have in the schools. And so I can see no reason why teachers shouldn't talk about transgender issues in schools, and the government are coming out with some guidance that you're talking about there, about what would be appropriate both by age and the material that is actually being given to kids.
But the thing is, it seems as though these charities and these companies are all trying to outperform each other with how inclusive and in-depth that they can be, which is what is leading to these detailed and really, I think, quite indoctrinating ideas about gender and really presenting them as fact. I think it's sort of a fever pitch where they all just want to outperform each other. But I think parents should definitely have more of a say, because at the end of the day, it's them that should be in charge of their children's education. I don't think it should be a random teacher with ideological views who pushes that onto vulnerable kids.
Well, Sunak's changes that you're referring to, some people are saying they're reminiscent of Section 28, which we'll all remember that ban promotion of homosexuality. Anyway, some of the things that he's saying, which sound like common sense to me, teachers must tell parents that their child is questioning their gender, no new preferred pronouns until the parents consent. The kids and the teachers don't have to respect the chosen pronouns for the pupils. Would you kind of agree with those measures?
Well, the whole thing there is that whatever a teacher does should be in the child's best interest. So if a child comes to a teacher and says, look, I think I'm transgender or I'm gay or whatever, please don't tell mum and dad, I think the teacher should respect that. Parents shouldn't have a veto over what their children are being taught.
You'd be very happy with your son going to school and being regarded in every way at school as a girl, and you have no knowledge of it. So your kid is now going, she's called Sarah at school, she's going to girls' toilets, she's talking about breast binding, chest binding, she's talking about potentially being put on a pathway to bodily mutilation and hormones. You'd be comfortable not knowing any of that?
Well, all those things are a long way down the road. I mean, you're talking about somebody who might be thinking about becoming transgender.
Well, I tell you, I think this is all a very slippery slope. And as a mum myself, I certainly do worry about this issue. I think it's one of the most serious things going on in our society today, what our children are learning at school and who gets the final say and how much awareness do we have of that of parents. I can tell you now that conversation will rumble on and on for another day. But for now, Nigel, thank you. Dominique, thank you as well for your time. Thank you at home as well. Don't you dare misgender me. I am a cat for at least the next few hours. Tomorrow, Michelle will be back. See you tomorrow. Meow.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with